So as we get started now, before I go into the slides, I just want to point out I am not actually going to show much in the way of actual Dancer. This is not introduction to Dancer. This is Dancer getting to Hello World. This is just getting to the starting line. Setting up all those things you need so that you can actually do something useful like create Hello World. I ran into some trouble when I first tried to figure that out, so that's where the set of slides come from. Another thing I'd like to point out is I actually do eat my own dog food. I gave a similar talk last season, and after being away from these slides for 6 months, I took the instructions in the slides and followed them on a fresh machine and actually made these and something that works. So if you follow these steps, you should be able to get to something that actually works for you. So now we'll get started. I'm Jeff Avery, and I'm here to talk about Dancer, sort of, getting to Hello World. So what is Dancer? It's one of those web frameworks. There's many of them now. They're all over the place. And Mojolicious is the other popular one these days. I do have a couple points in the slides where I will discuss what you want to do if you want to do that one instead of this one. But as they both run on top of Plack, they're kind of the same, even if different. And they claim the Dancer is dead simple, intuitive, minimalist, very expressive syntax, and that is built on, inspired by Ruby Sinatra. But what is Plack? It's that middle layer that goes in between where CGI used to live, and as we all know, CGI is on its way out. We get a third lightning talk today telling us something about CGI. Yes, there's yet a third. It's sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly. I am not going to make any comment on which of the three is which. So, PSGI and Plack are that super glue that holds your stuff that you write to actually make the site together, and Apache or Nginx or something out front, and it helps get things moving in between. If you were going to go pick up Dancer and you decided, let me go Google it, you'd get to a site and it would say, do these 4 things. Collect Dancer, run the command script to get you a Hello World site, CD into it, run Plack up to start it on port 3000, point your browser there. And, well, that assumes a whole lot. It assumes you have a Perl modern enough that you can actually do that you have Dancer available where you can get at it, that you have a front-end web server and something to run in behind it so that they can talk with the proxiness going on. And I didn't have any of that. So that's where we're going to go. We're going to try to get all that stuff taken care of. We're going to start with a brand new Ubuntu machine running on Linode. That's where I tested it all. So it's straight out of the box. We're going to add GCC because I've discovered that when you try to install some things into Perl, like dbi.pm, if the Perl that you have from the package manager isn't matching up with the C compiler you have now, well, it gets very cranky. So we're going to just remove all doubt. We're going to install all the new things we need for Perl. We're going to put Nginx to be out front, Starman to be in back, create a Hello World script, and every once in a while we'll mention Mojolicious. A couple assumptions. I do have a fresh Ubuntu that I'm working on. These directions should work pretty much straight up on any version of Unix. If you want to step further afield, you may have to translate some, but that's left as an exercise for the reader. I also assume that you have your DNS set up for whatever domain you're going to use. I'm using sample dinealias.org, which I got for free, but any other thing can fit in that spot. It's one of the, there's a slide later that shows this and a few other things that are the assumptions I've made. Those are the ones you want to change when you're configuring. And all the code samples you see in here run as a couple of different users. Some of them are done by root, which is sort of orangish. Me, my developer who's going to be developing the website, is purplish. Mr. Prod, we're not going to see much of him in these slides. There are some extra slides that are in last year's talk and a second slide pack that will come after this one that shows you how to use Git to get things from me over to Mr. Prod and share things around. And Mr. Perl is going to install a new version of Perl for us. It's not going to be owned by me or by root. It'll be some special user that's going to take care of all the Perl for us, so we never have to worry about it or permissions. When you're starting out on a new Linux box, unless you got the distribution right after it was released, it's not up to date anymore. And since we're going to install some things, we don't want to install things right away without updating. So apt-get upgrade will get the box up to snuff where it should be now. Last year, in the version of these slides, I had a very long list of things to install here, GCC and all its friends, and somebody said, just use Build Essentials. So we do. And when you install Build Essentials, it's going to install a lot of things for you and suggest a few more packages. I didn't bother to install them, but you're looking at the list now. If you see that you need something, now would be a good time to go ahead and add it. So this will take care of having C. We're going to put in Nginx. You could do Apache or Cherokee or one of the others at this point, whatever floats your boat. And I showed you 4 people earlier, so we need to create them. I'm not going to dwell on this. We're going to have 2 groups, people and almost root. And then we're going to put me, Mr. Prod, in people, and Mr. Perl in almost root, so that later we can share them with other developers that you have who you don't want to give real root privileges to. So when we get these things running, we're going to have some logs to write. Plack is going to be writing the logs on the back end of things when you're running your site, and Nginx will be running them out front. So we're going to put them in var log, and we're going to change the permissions so that everyone can read, write, and execute. That's probably not the way you want to go. I decided after I made the slide maybe it'd be better to show it and give it the ownership to the right place. But these things, the files in there, will be owned by me and Mr. Prod and any other user on the system. So give them to the user who's going to actually be writing into it. Nginx, on the other hand, it runs, in my case, as www data in the group admin. So you could give it to them or just open it up. Almost no one else is on my boxes, so I really don't care. But if you're in a bigger environment, you do need to worry about such things. And before I started working on all this, I didn't realize that the trick to kill off processes later is to write a file somewhere with your process ID, because you know the name of that file because you always use the same name for the file, and then you can use it to kill off your process. So we're going to make sure that our plackup has a place to write it. Unfortunately, being in the var run directory, everything gets blown away when you restart the machine. So either you have to make sure that this directory ends up here again, or instead of making your files var run plackup / some name, it's var run plackup dot whatever. And then you don't have to worry about the directory disappearing out from under you. I'm going to add 2 aliases for root, since root is the one we're going to be when we restart the Nginx. We will give an alias for that. And every time I see things like this in print, it always gives you the bash version of things. I like the T-shell, so I'm giving it to you both ways so you don't have to translate. Why other authors can't do that, I have never figured out. And then we're going to set an environment variable for Perl Brew. Perl Brew is that thing that lets you install as many Perls as you want. And if you use it the way it's designed to be used, they go in your home directory, in a subdirectory in there. But I'm not doing it that way. I'm doing it all as Mr. Perl. We're going to put it in one place. All the users will use it, and we don't have to worry about which version we're using, and we can stay consistent. Next, we're going to install Perl Brew. We're doing this as root. Remember, the Perl that came with the system belongs to root, so he's the one who needs to do it. And when I went to do it, it asks me at the bottom of the page, which way do you want to do it? Local lib, sudo, or manual? And it likes local lib, so I figured why not? Nothing else is on the box. But I don't have local lib, so we have to install it first. If someone can tell me a reason why I should do one of the others, I can change the slides, but I think it's the way to go. Then we're going to make a place where we're going to put our Perl, not in your home directory. That would be a little silly. So we're going to put it in opt Perl Brew, because opt seems to be the place you put that sort of thing that you want to share. And we're going to change the owner over to Mr. Perl so he can take the rest of the steps. And now we're going to give him also an environment variable so he doesn't put it in his home directory. And now it's time to start brewing. So Perl Brew init, as Mr. Perl, will go and put stuff there. And it says here that it gives you something you can source, and it comes in two flavors. It comes in a C shell and a bash version. We don't actually need to source that, because all we really need is the name of the directory where we're going to have our current Perl, and we'll take care of that in a few slides. Now it's time, which Perl do we want to install? I did this a week or two ago. The newest version is out, 5.18.0. So you can see the list of available Perls is the latest and greatest in each of the releases since 5.0.03. And the newest, current one on the development path, which just this year is 5.19. I went 5.18.0. So just use Perl Brew, install 5.18.0, and it says here this could take a while. They're not kidding. On my machine that has absolutely nothing on it, it took 21 minutes. So go get a snack, come back, you can watch the tail of the log as it goes along. Next, we're going to make an alias so that we can always just point to Perl Brew current and be done with it. And we'll look in there and see what's there, and then we have our alias. Now it's time to install a few modules. I started with DBI. If you're really doing modern Perl, everyone knows you use something more modern than that. But the point is, DBI has a C component, and I could make sure that GCC is playing along. This is where I usually get in trouble if I'm trying to install things on the system Perl. And then we have to install YAML ourselves. It's optional with Dancer, but it's terribly useful, and it doesn't remind you to do it, so go ahead and get it. And then task Plack, Starman, which are that stuff that runs in the middle, and Dancer Template Toolkit for these things we need for Dancer. And after I had everything up and running, I went back and just added Mojolicious too, and that was enough. I expect you need Plack, task Plack, and Starman probably, if you were just going down the Mojolicious path.
What's the I for?
Install. Last year, the slides from last year, if you go back and find them, they use CPAN Plus, but as of 5.18, CPAN Plus is now out of favor. So I switched over to minus. Now we're going to switch over to being an actual user and set up something for Dancer. And we need to add where the new Perl is, so we're going to change our path. And I just always have this alias for directory, which you saw me use earlier, so I threw it in anyway. Go into your home directory and make a websites, and then go in there. And now we are up to the second step of 4 from the original instructions. Dancer -A to build a website, and it makes these files. It actually, the list you will see when you run it is slightly longer because it lists the directories too. Now it's there and ready to go. If you want to run it from the command line, you just run this Plack up. It defaults to port 3000. I figure I have more than one thing running. I don't want to put it on 3000, so I picked another port number, and then the script in there that needs to run. If you run Mojolicious, the equivalent of Plack up is Morbo that they give you, and you also point it to the script that's out front for the site. Now we're going to go and configure Nginx to be out front and Starman to be behind so that you don't have to run this from the command line. When you run it with Plack up, it's there on the command line and the logs are right there on your screen, and that's not terribly useful if you want this thing to be up all the time. So these are the assumptions I've made, and anytime you see these values in the coming slides, that's the things you're going to need to change to make it work on your machine. So I have a domain, and the me copy of it's going to put me.dev in front of it, so it's me.dev.web, myweb.sample. And since there's more than one user, all mine are going in the 18,000 range port-wise, and this site's 21. The site I actually used as a sample to originally build this is my stuff, and I have 14 domains by 3 users, so this is a system that worked to keep things out of colliding with each other. For Nginx, which is the website that sits out front, like Apache, it uses configuration files. They go in, etc., Nginx sites available, and need to know these things. You'll notice a lot of the values from that last page are in here, including at the very bottom that there's a proxy, so it can go through to something running behind. If we had set it up with Plack up earlier on the command line, that would already be running, and then this would just go straight through to 1821 when someone came in with a real server name. Notice that the access logs are here and the other logs and all that good stuff. So this goes in sites available, and just like Apache, Nginx has a second directory, sites enabled, so that you don't have things getting lost. You just put everything in sites available, and occasionally make connections from enabled to the ones that you actually want on right now. Now, earlier we started the backend as us with Plack up and had our logs right here in front of us. We don't really want to do that. We want them to be somewhere else. So we can use Starman, which it takes care of that for us. We use the demonized version. We tell it which port to listen on, where to write its logs, where to put its process ID number so that later we can kill it off, and how many workers. It defaults to 5. If you are just doing stuff in your sandbox and it's only you hitting it, there's no need to tax the server, so I'd knocked it down to 1, but you can set that for whatever. And then the last line in here is the thing that we fed to Plack up in the first place. Where's the script that's the front door to make the website work? And now would be a good time to go look at the site. Oops. There it is. So this is a Hello World script as given to us by Dancer. Yay. So if you're following the directions that they originally gave you, this is what you would get. And about the only thing it shows you is that it has some environment variables set. But that's still useful things. And from there, Dancer's not too difficult to get started. To stop the backend server, you can use kill, and you give it the name of the file where it has written its PID when it got started. It's the whole point of having them there. And now, I have about 2 minutes left, which is just enough time for the bonus slides. How to avoid one of the biggest errors. And if you look back at last year's slides or some other ones that will be available after these, you can find out how to install Git, check everything in where you are as me, and install Gitosis, which instead of using GitHub, you can have your own private repository to get things across to another user to check them out, and then continue along with the same pattern we use for getting the site set up. So with a Dancer site, you get a configuration file, which is in YAML, another reason that we wanted to install it in the first place. And this is the actual file as it comes to us, with everything commented out. And I decided I would like to use the Template Toolkit and bring some of it in, and I uncommented a few of these lines. Notice that here the start tag and end tag use square braces. Template Toolkit often uses angle braces. For historical reasons, they have both, and you can... Dancer uses the angle, but if you have existing code that uses it the other way, you can flip it here so it knows the old way and uses the square braces. So this is what we were given. This is what I switched to. Could anybody see what I did wrong?
Leaving white space on the lines below.
Yes. I made a bit of a mistake with template and engines and did not get it right. When I did this, something went wrong. And it ended up in my log file. Oh, help if I could actually push the left button. And this is what ended up in my log file. over and over and over again until I ran out of disk space. There were no messages of any kind given to me to tell me something had gone wrong, other than that file just kept getting bigger and then eventually ran out. And I only figured it out when I was trying to do something else and it wouldn't work. So I decided to make a tarball of it and move it to a machine where it might work, and even that wouldn't work. And that's when I got a message that I was out of space and went looking. So do not do your file do not forget your spaces. Make sure that you remember that YAML white space counts and that template and engines needs to be all the way out on the edge, and you can avoid filling the log file and having a very bad day. And that's all I got. So I just about used up my time, but we have time for a question or two as people get ready to wander. So, anything? Yep.
I just have to throw out a little application for using process managers instead of PID files. There's some really good ones out there, and my life has gotten easier since I started doing that.
So you've given up on the PID files and switched to process managers.
Like Run It or Daemon Tools is the original one, but there's like several derivatives that are all generally better than Daemon Tools. Run It is a nice simple.
What's the best thing to Google for?
Run It.
Run It.
RUNIT.
RUNIT is what to look for in place of, for something to replace the PID files.
Yeah, and what it is just a process that forks off, defined services and waits for them to die, and if they die, it starts them up again.
Okay.
You can give it a command that says shut it down, and it'll shut down that service. It knows what the PID is because it's the parent process.
Good to know. Anything else? Yep.
I feel like saying, well, template alloy instead of template toolkit, but it's template toolkit compatible, and you have even more capabilities. But
So which one is that?
template alloy, I think it has
Template alloy to replace template toolkit.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's denser interface.
Maybe, but you can write it. There's template alloy, simple template download, and but you can write your own. It's really simple.
Okay. Yep.
Perhaps I missed it. Where in the process did the Starman port get mapped to a public port?
The Starman port and a public port got mapped back when we told Nginx where things lived. Tell
Nginx knows to run at 80.
Yeah, Nginx here at the top, it's listening on 80 on the proper domain, on the server name.
Okay.
And at the very bottom here, it's deciding where to send it on in the proxy settings, which is back on the server it's already on the funny port number.
So you could spin up multiple sites at different ports in PSGI, and each of them would have their own, I guess this is a virtual host container.
Yes, the way I got around having multiple sites, because I had 14 domains, and I had me, although on my machine I'm Jeff. And then Mr. Prod owns a dev copy and a production copy, so that's where everything would be collected together. And my solution is, my stuff runs in the 8,000s for the ports, dev's in the 7,000s, the production's in the 6,000s, and I have a list what number everything goes with. So this site would be site 21, 8,021, 7,020, 6,021, and I have a configuration script that knows all the users on the machine, all the domains on the machine, and where all the directory routes are for log files. And I have a script that I can configure that turns things on and off and mixes and matches. It also builds this file right here, so I don't have to. So you can have as many things as you want as long as you don't collide on the port number.
And they'll all show up on the public ports for world.
Yes. And on the public end of things, for the server name, you use a different domain name for each site. And in my case, for me, I put me.dev out front. The dev sites, I put .dev out front. Production site, I put nothing out front. And that solves the problem. Anything else? Well then, thank you very much, and we have 14 minutes of X talk.